Yeah, Kate, so we are told that the U.S. is in discussions with partner countries, including Israel and Egypt, to try to establish some kind of humanitarian corridor out of Gaza because, as Jeremy laid out so well there, the Israeli military is continuing to strike Gaza. They cut off all electricity and water, and there are Americans inside Gaza who are really desperate to get out, as well as, of course, other civilians. And so what we are hearing at this point is that Egypt, while they are willing to send medicine and food and other supplies into Gaza using a corridor, they are not willing to open a corridor going the other way to allow civilians out of Gaza. So right now, the U.S. is working with partner countries to try to establish, of course, a pathway for civilians to get out. Americans have expressed a lot of frustration to CNN in interviews in recent days, saying that they don't believe that the U.S. has been able to help and that they're desperate for a way out as Israel continues to pound Gaza with airstrikes and with other kinds of attacks. So right now there's no timeline on when that corridor is actually going to be open, but State Department spokesperson Matthew Miller, he did tell us just this morning, quote, "We're doing these discussions quietly like a lot of the diplomatic efforts we undertake. It is not productive to speak about publicly," he said, but it is something that the U.S. is trying to achieve.
Yeah, there's a lot of moving parts that goes into that, and will be likely more developments on that one. Talk to us also about the new reporting that you have about what the U.S. and allies are doing in terms of the warnings they're now putting out to Hezbollah.
Yeah, Kate, so the U.S. and allies, they're very concerned that Hezbollah could use this opportunity to join the war on Israel's northern border there, and they have issued several warnings to Hezbollah through intermediaries, including the Hezbollah-aligned Speaker of Lebanon's parliament, warning them to stay out of the conflict. France has also issued several warnings to Hezbollah at the request of Israel, we are told, telling them to steer clear of this war. Now, at this point, the U.S. is backing up its warnings with action. We saw that the U.S. sent an aircraft carrier to the eastern Mediterranean as a deterrence measure to try to deter any potential actors, including Hezbollah, from feeling tempted to enter the conflict. At this point, we should note that administration officials do not necessarily see Hezbollah as eager to join this war. There are a number of political and economic risks that the administration does not believe Hezbollah is willing to take at this point. But of course, that could change and things could quickly spiral and escalate. We've already seen a number of clashes on Israel's northern border between Hezbollah and the IDF. So things are very tense right now, and U.S. officials and allies across the region, they're watching this very closely.
Yeah, absolutely. Natasha, great reporting as always. Stay close to it. We'll get back to you. John?
All right, with us now, retired U.S. Army Major Mike Lyons. Major, great to see you. Let's focus in on the region we're really talking about right now. Gaza, down at the southern end of Israel right now. And we were just talking about the people inside Gaza. Gaza, by the way, roughly twice the size of Washington, D.C., with 3 times the population, more than 2 million people. The only way out, potentially, right now, would be Rafah, down here on the border with Egypt. What does that mean for the 2 million people in here as Israel potentially moves in? And what does that mean for Israel as it potentially plans a ground invasion?
Yeah, think concrete jungle. That's the level of built-up areas that exist, especially in the north here. And you can tell from the map here as to where those areas are up in here and up in this area right here. So the civilians are going to have to make a hard decision, and that is to try to get to the south where it's going to be safer. Because any ground operation likely does start, when it does start, will be in this northern area here. Likely through areas right through the north. We've seen this before. In the last, when they last came here in 2014, Israeli forces came in this way, they came through here, and then they came through here. I have to think Israeli forces in the south will allow a safe passage of those civilians here, but a lot of them will still get trapped up in this northern region.
I want to ask, Jeremy Diamond brought up a really interesting point. Again, here is Gaza. I'm going to draw the outskirts here so people can see more firmly. All enter here, by the way, the kibbutzim that Hamas terrorists attacked on Saturday. Jeremy said there are concerns that Hamas might be prepared for a ground invasion. What could Hamas do to slow down the Israelis if they did move in?
I think they have been preparing for it. You have to assume that the Israeli counteroffensive has got to be after those defensive operations. They've got to likely know where they think they're coming through. So this is a hard border here. There's only certain areas which will allow the speed and shock effect was what Israel would like to bring into that fight. Those positions now have been built up and they've got defenses. So I think this kind of the second thing that Israel had to get, besides President Biden's permission or for the logistics to come in through, they have to soften up those defensive positions. So I think that's why it's going to take a few more days at least.
I want to bring up what could be an even greater concern in terms of the security of Israel right now, and that is the north of the country. Let me draw the borders of Israel here because it doesn't really show up on our map. But you can see here, this is Israel. Down here is Gaza, where all the fighting has been recently, but an enormous amount of concern toward Lebanon because of Hezbollah, which is set up shop really in the southern part of that country. One of the things we learned from 2006 when there was fighting between Israel and Hamas in Gaza was that Hezbollah has multiples more in terms of strength and forces and missiles.
Yeah, tanks, they have anti-tank equipment and the like. It comes down to numbers, 170,000 active duty Israeli forces. They have to put at least 100K down here in order to have any kind of offensive operation there. And then they have to make a tough decision whether they garrison it or whether they just leave it alone. And that leaves them 70K of active duty forces to focus in the north, which is why they recalled those 300,000. I have to think half of those reservists are going to be told their orders are going to be get to the north and just stay there, because this is where the greatest risk comes from. If Hezbollah recognizes that they've overcommitted to the south now, they're going to have to look at this as an opportunity that they'll never see again. They'll have the Israeli army somewhat on the ropes, and now they can attack to the north and really put Israel in a bad way.
That is really interesting. So no matter how much they do here, they've got to leave a tremendous numbers in terms of reserves to deal with the potential in the north. I just want to note that Tel Aviv, we can see Tel Aviv, the capital, well, Jerusalem, considered the capital, also Tel Aviv, the most populous city, right there. Gaza, Hamas can't hit Tel Aviv with rockets, but Hezbollah has much more in terms of technical capabilities.
Yeah, and they can come from well north Lebanon. They can come from areas where, again, Iron Dome could likely knock them out, but you're talking Patriot missiles now at that level, because those fly at a much higher altitude. The Iron Dome system, gets those lower, smaller range rockets there. These rockets could come from much further away.
Major Mike Lyons, great to have you. Thank you very much for that. Sarah?
Thank you, John. All right, this is a live look right now at Gaza. On your right, you are seeing smoke billowing. On your left, you are seeing some of the damage from strikes. We have now learned, just in the past few minutes, that the only power station that exists in Gaza for the electricity grid no longer has any fuel. The power is officially out unless you have a generator. With Israel's constant airstrikes and a blockade on all sides, there is no fuel, no water, no food getting through. The humanitarian crisis there will most likely expand. The latest on the aftermath of the attacks by Hamas and the situation in Gaza.
Is to provide complete balanced nutrition for strength and energy.
Ensure with 27 vitamins and minerals, nutrients for immune health, and Ensure Complete with 30 grams of protein.
Did you know you could save with GoodRx even if you have insurance?
I'm on Medicare. I check GoodRx because I can beat my copay. Who wouldn't like that?
Even if you have insurance, GoodRx can help you save. Another good reason to check GoodRx.
We will no longer be prisoners to you, Winter. We shall fly south to where the courts are eternally bright, and we will do so with Consumer Cellular. The same coverage for up to half the cost. When freedom calls, we're here to answer.
Indulge in the creamy flavor of Bob Evans mashed potatoes 2-count single-serve cups. 2 individual servings of potatoes, milk, and butter. For a homemade taste you'll love. Ready in minutes. Bring home the perfectly sized comfort of Bob Evans today.
This is spring semester. There are over 13,000 U.S. school districts which have become top targets for ransomware attacks. But there's never been a reported ransomware attack on a Chromebook, which is why thousands of schools, like the Fairfield-Sassoon Unified School District, switch to Google Tools for education. So they can focus on teaching, and 22,000 students can focus on learning, knowing that their data is secure.
If you're on Medicare, remember, the annual enrollment period is here. The time to choose your coverage begins October 15th and ends December 7th. So call United Healthcare and see how you can get more of what matters with our broad range of plans.
including an AARP Medicare Advantage plan from United Healthcare. It can combine your hospital and doctor coverage with Part D prescription drug coverage and more, all in one simple plan. These plans are made to support your whole health with $0 annual physical exams, $0 lab tests, and $0 preventive care like mammograms and colonoscopies. And you'll get more for your Medicare dollar with $0 copays on most covered dental services, a $0 eye exam, and an allowance for eyewear, plus $0 copays on hundreds of prescriptions at the pharmacy or by mail. Now's the time to look at United Healthcare's variety of plans. So give us a call to learn more about coverage options in your area. With our Right Plan Promise, you have our commitment to helping you find the right plan for your needs. And to help make life with Medicare simpler, you'll get the all-in-one member U-Card. Only from United Healthcare, the U-Card is your United Healthcare member ID and much more. Show your U-Card when you visit your primary care provider, dentist, or eye doctor, or fill a prescription at the pharmacy, and use it to access Medicare Advantage's largest national network of providers. You can count on United Healthcare to help you get the care you need when you need it. Enrollment ends December 7th. Now's the time to learn more about America's most chosen Medicare Advantage plans and how they can open doors to a simpler healthcare experience with the all-in-one U-Card. Call United Healthcare today about the only Medicare Advantage plans with the AARP name and get more of what matters to you.
Why is Aaron happy? Well, Carvana has tens of thousands of cars under $20,000. So Aaron's folks could help hook him up with a new ride. We'll drive you happy at Carvana.
Showing you live pictures. These are live pictures from Gaza as we are now seeing once again another day we're seeing Israel pounding Gaza with airstrikes. We've also learned from the IDF that some 300,000 Israeli reservists have been called up to the fight. You've got the fight that could be coming in Gaza. Also, they're taking on pressure. They're taking on the fight also potentially in the northern part of Israel at the border with Lebanon. The death toll right now, more than 1,200 people reported killed in Israel. The death toll in Gaza now rising as well. Let's get the very latest. Joining us right now is a spokesperson for the Israel Defense Forces, Major Libby Weiss. Major, thank you once again for coming up. I know you're in southern Israel. Can we first, though, talk about the border with Lebanon? What is happening at the northern Israeli border with Lebanon?
Hi, thank you for having me. It is a situation that we are monitoring very, very closely. We have seen several isolated events in the last few days of mortar fire and infiltrations from Lebanon. Of course, though, we are sending a message as loud as clear as possible, which is to tell any other terrorist organization or any state that harbors or sponsors them to not engage in this conflict and to not test us at this time. And of course, we're monitoring what's happening there very, very closely.
We do know that 3 IDF soldiers were killed in clashes with Hezbollah in the north. That was on Monday. Have more Israeli soldiers been killed in the north since? Because that is what Hezbollah is claiming today.
I don't have anything to add to what you mentioned. And of course, when we have additional news, we'll be able to share it with you.
One of your colleagues said today that 300,000 reservists are gathering near the Gaza border. Would it be wrong to read this as meaning a ground incursion into Gaza is hours or just days away?
I would read it as saying that the IDF is prepared for any decision that the government will make. Decisions to escalate the conflict to a ground invasion would be something that the government would have to decide. As the IDF, of course, we need to be ready for whatever decision may be made. And that's how I think would be the best way to interpret it.
Gaza's only power station is now reporting just this morning, just this hour, that it is out of power. The power is out in Gaza. Yes, people have generators. Those will be running out in just a matter of days, if you will. What does that mean for the IDF? It's very clear what it can mean for civilians in Gaza, but what does that mean for the IDF to have the power out in Gaza?
Well, our goal with this war, of course, is to make sure that Hamas has no military capability of being able to strike us again. I apologize for the noise. There's a lot going on around me here, so apologies for that. But that's what it means. And of course, we want to make sure that Hamas doesn't have any of the resources to continue targeting and killing Israelis.
The Defense Ministry put out video this morning of the first shipment of munitions from the United States arriving. What can you tell me about that? How much was it? What was it? And where is it intended? What's the impact of it for the IDF?
Well, of course, I think as the president discussed in his speech last night, there's no clear sign of the strong ally that we have in the United States, in the sense that I think much of the world is with us in wanting to fight Hamas and make sure that the massacre that we saw is not something that happens again. Of course, I can't go into sort of specifics of what that means, but I think it's a very, very strong sign of the support that we have from all over the world and certainly from the United States.
But safe to say at this moment, when you're calling up 300,000 reservists, not everyone has the equipment that they will need in order to pull off a ground incursion?
I'm sorry, can you repeat the question? I don't hear very well because of the noise behind me.
Absolutely. But safe to say, with munitions coming over from the United States, is it safe to say that all of the 300,000 reservists, the largest call-up that you've had, that it also means that not everyone that will be on the front lines has the equipment that they need in this moment to pull off a successful ground incursion?
Again, I would not be talking right now about being at a ground incursion. Of course, right now we want to be prepared for any kind of scenario, and there are very close discussions that are being had at all levels with our American allies about potential scenarios and what kind of support potentially could be needed down the road. But that's the most I can comment about that right now.
Some civilians in Gaza are saying very clearly they want to get out, but they cannot get out. Where do you suggest people in Gaza to go to flee? Egypt?
Well, first of all, I would suggest that if they are given advance warning, that they should move any kind of distance from where they are. And I would say more than that. I think that there are large questions that need to be asked to Hamas in the Gaza Strip, as to why they decided to launch this massacre in the first place, and why they...
Absolutely, but in the immediate, there are civilians in Gaza asking to get out. There's a lot of talk that the Rafah crossing is not, has been closed, or at least temporarily. And there was a statement from the IDF that seems to have been clawed back that going to Egypt was a suggestion. So I'm just trying to get clarity if Israel has a suggestion where people in Gaza should go.
Well, again, first I would say that if they do receive any kind of advance warning, to simply put distance from where they are and go somewhere else, even within the Strip. And beyond that, there is another border that the Gaza Strip has with Egypt, and I can't speak to that situation at this stage.
Major Libby Weiss, thank you so much. Sarah?
Thank you.
All right. Amid the escalating conflict in Israel and Gaza, the most innocent among us, children, are caught in the intense violence. I do want to warn you that these images are disturbing and they are graphic. The Israeli Defense Forces tell CNN that Hamas has carried out a massacre in a village in southern Israel, where they say women, children, toddlers, and the elderly were, as they say, quote, brutally butchered in an ISIS way of action. You see that crib overturned there, and again, that included babies, brutally massacred. This video is from that village. You can see that crib, of course. Officials could not confirm just how many people ended up being killed there. But for those who have survived, there is anguish, there is terror, there is concern and confusion. This is Ashkelon, Israel, where Aaron Burnett has been reporting all morning, and rockets have been fired into that city. A firefighter is handing a drink to a child there after a rocket attack. You can see the distress on his face and those around him. Children are also among the hostages that have been taken by Hamas. One mother has told CNN she was on the phone with her 2 children the moment they were taken, and she has not heard from them since. And this is in Gaza after an Israeli strike. You are seeing one of the medical team's ambulances running a child into the back of an ambulance. The child clearly has been injured, potentially killed. There is so much damage there, it is almost unrecognizable. Also in Gaza, you see a man holding the body of a child there, that child killed, covered there from an Israeli strike, a last embrace before he had to bury that child. Palestinians are saying that at least 260 children have now been killed in Gaza. They say 22 entire families have been killed. We will be back in just a moment.
Pro-level performance at work and at home. Right now, save $20 on the VGA 57 battery blower. Real steel. Find yours.
I'd like to tell you about a cashew farmer from Mozambique named Carlos. Carlos lifted himself out of poverty with the help of TechnoServe. Go to technoserve.org and see how you can support struggling farmers like Carlos. It's a different way to make a difference.
Some things are good to know, like where to find the cheapest gas in town, and which supermarket gives you the most bang for your buck. Something else that's good to know? If you have Medicare and Medicaid, you may be able to get more health care benefits through a Humana Medicare Advantage dual-eligible special needs plan. Call now to see if there's a plan in your area and to see if you qualify. All of these plans include doctor, hospital, and prescription drug coverage in one convenient plan. From Humana, a company with over 60 years of experience in the healthcare industry. You'll have lots of doctors and specialists to choose from. And if you have Medicare and Medicaid, a Humana Medicare Advantage dual-eligible special needs plan can give you other important benefits. All of these plans include coverage for dental, with 2 free cleanings a year, plus fillings and a yearly exam. Vision, including eye exams and a yearly allowance for eyewear. And hearing benefits, including routine hearing exams and coverage for hearing aids, plus an allowance to help pay for essentials like eligible groceries, utilities, and rent, even over-the-counter items. And whatever you don't spend gets carried over to the next month. Best of all, you'll pay nothing for covered prescriptions all year long.
More Atrocities by Hamas. A song by Paul Beckman, Paul Rainbow Song. Also the new and first leader of humankind in the free world. Created October 11th, 2023. Well, you just heard that news report of what she said. A few pictures and video and images. Well, more news reports of atrocities by Hamas. ISIS-like in character, including decapitations, chopping off the heads of human beings, whether babies, toddlers, young people, boys or girls, women, men, the elderly, as examples, killed, their lives snuffed out by Hamas. Now that's enough. Yes, it is enough. It should never happen anymore. It should never happen ever again. I mourn all the people that they've talked about, killed or kidnapped. Terrible thing, terrible thing, terrible thing, terrible thing, terrible thing, terrible thing.